I'm very Markowski. I don't have anything to do with Google, but I have two questions. One is for Harry Lewis, the other is for
You're going to ask you to choose one, okay?
That's difficult. Okay, let's go with the China one. Having lived for 20 years under communism in Bulgaria, and having been listening to the Voice of America and Free Europe, which were broadcasted by the US mainly, and were noised by the Bulgarian authorities, as well as the Russian and everyone else in the East Bloc. According to what you say, the US should not have actually radio transmitted Voice of America because our authorities were actually making noise on the same frequency. But I can tell you, if we didn't have access to this little information, we today would have not been members of NATO or the European Union.
No.
So how would you...
There isn't a parallel between the United States Voice of America and Google. Google is a business, and the issue for Google only came up because they wanted to set up shop inside China, have employees there, run their servers there, and do business with inside China. And there are rules inside China for how businesses have to operate. And if I can just respond to Professor Lessig's statement, I agree that businesses doing business in a country have to obey the laws of the country they're doing business in. And my contention is that Google made the wrong decision in deciding to do business in a country whose demands were so inconsistent with their fundamental mission in life.
So there's more evidence to how freedom breaks out in a country that I think people should consider. In Czechoslovakia, Václav Havel was a playwright, and he wrote very obscure plays that the authorities didn't understand well. But the fact that people went to the plays, they talked about them, they were talking about revolution, they were talking about freedom. Similar things are happening now with Google's help in China. They're using cultural references that the authorities don't understand and that Google and nobody else can control. They're using language, they're talking to each other, they're communicating with each other, and they're finding each other through Google. I'm not concerned about the...
Well, if I can just add, just to be clear, Google is not actually the major search engine that's actually used in China. So there are other avenues.
I want to go to, in a little bit of time we have left, to get in two more questions up in the far right.
One of my questions about China was just addressed. My other question is about the Google Chrome browser, which allows it to collect personal advertising information. I was wondering how both sides of the motion felt that it could use this as a force for good or for evil.
The collection of personal information?
Yes, through the browser.
Is there, Esther, a good use of the collection of personal information?
Sure. It can, if a user wants, this information can be extremely valuable for the user. The user may want to share that information with other people. People keep talking as if users' information ought to be secret. People are now going online voluntarily sharing it. They love comparing themselves. They like to compare their music tastes. They like to know whether they're hot or not. I like to compare my genome with other people's genomes. And the ability to know more about yourself, to share it with other people, that's what mirrors are for, and they're best sellers.
I'll show you my genome if you show me yours. Siva.
The issue behind privacy and the regulation of personal information is not that people should or should not or do not want to share. The issue is a matter of personal autonomy. Having the easy-to-access controls over who sees what in what context. And it's a much more fluid, complicated, and multifaceted question than simply the idea that we are putting our favorite music up on Facebook in torrents. That's true, but it's not relevant. The fact is, Chrome and Gmail offer us no way to manage our personal information. Google service harvests that information, and people use Chrome and Gmail without any real knowledge or recognition or simple acknowledgement of the transaction. Most people who use Google do not understand the transaction in which they are engaging, and that is a problem.
Our last question from right down front. Make it a doozy.
I'd like some clarity on the definition of evil that we're using. If an entity has good goals and achieves them imperfectly, and such that some bad is caused by their imperfect achievement of those goals, is that evil? I don't see anything evil in spoiling your employees or in choosing to place some value on an ad-free search result such that it costs more for the advertisers. I potentially see evil in the decision to censor the results in China if that was a decision made for the goal of financial return.
But at bottom, you're asking what?
Do we have any way of knowing what Google's goals are in making these decisions? And if we don't, do we have any way of evaluating whether or not they're evil?
Siva.
We each have the capacity of judging whether any particular action is evil. I, of course, am appealing to authority, one of the classic fallacies, the authority being Dante and Pope Gregory. But I didn't mean to do so quite so facetiously. I do mean to say that all of the things that big, successful corporations should do tend to trample on the canon of good and evil that we have been swimming in. And in fact, it's hypocritical for a company to say that it will hold itself to such a high standard. It's perfectly reasonable for Google to do almost everything it has done as a profit-making venture. And I applaud most of what it's done. But the real question is this standard itself being undermined by its very actions? Is the fact that it set this high standard for itself ultimately foolish?
Thank you very much. And that includes the head-to-head portion of the discussion. And thanks for your terrific questions, which actually were quite good questions and kept things moving along.